This is a public service announcement to teenage viewers of YouTube, and maybe some young adults, or some not so young adults, about coming out to their families about their atheism. I recently, and by recently I mean Christmas Day, came out about my atheism to my family. I did not willingly come out, but rather my dad asked me, and last year he asked me and I lied to him, and I felt that that was wrong. So this year I made a promise to myself that if I was ever asked by anyone in my family whether or not I was Christian or not, I would be completely honest with them. It just so happened that day happened to be Christmas night, actually. It wasn't like I ruined the celebration. It was after the festive mood had passed, I guess you could say. It was over the phone as well. I had just left, and I had just gotten home when he called and asked me. He said he wanted to talk about it earlier, but he didn't want to spoil the mood. So he called me Christmas Day and asked me if I was Christian, and I said no. And he said, well, what are you? I told him, atheist. And then we had what you would probably expect. Of course, myself, I'm a very adept, I guess you say, debater for religion, because I do it so often in public, in person, and over YouTube as well. I guess you could say I'm rather adept at it versus someone who's not so adept. Actually, not even, I wouldn't classify what he was saying as an argument as novice, but I guess you could say someone novice at debating religion if you give him the credit of being such. And it did not last very long because I had been very well prepared for it, and I quickly dismissed all of his arguments. It was probably one of the most emptiest debates I've ever held, and I really wish it would not have happened. But that's not what the point of this video is today. The point of this video is to help others who are in the same situation I was, where they were. And I understand that as a child, I'm not calling you children because I'm a child myself, I'm saying teenagers, I guess. To the teenagers and young adults, I know that what you're feeling when you're an atheist in a Christian family, because my family is my dad is very devout Catholic and my mother is non-denominational. My grandparents, two of them are Pentecostal. One of them is my dad, which is kind of ironic. My dad's mother is very, very liberal, and she was the first person I told. I told her months ago, but she's different from the rest of my family in that she's very liberal. The rest of my family is rather conservative. So she was probably the easiest person to tell, and I never actually told her I was atheist. I told her I was deist, because deist always sounds more, I guess, it seems a little more acceptable to some ears than saying I'm atheist, because atheism has gotten a rather bad rap. So to the teenagers and young adults, and even older adults who are considering telling their parents and close family members that they are atheist, the first thing I'm going to say to you is don't. I would highly recommend, if you are financially dependent upon your parents, to not do it. Unless, of course, you know your parents will not freak out. My mom does not know still. My mother is still in the dark. My dad doesn't talk to my mother at all. They've been divorced since I was 9. They do not speak well to each other. However, my dad, I'm not financially dependent upon my dad, so I really didn't care to tell him, or I don't really care that he knows now. But if you are financially dependent on your parents, and you know that they would probably, and this is going not too much to the 17, 16-year-olds, but more the people over 18 who could actually be legally kicked out of their house and financially cut off from their parents. To you, I would suggest not doing it until you are financially dependent, because there are some parents who will disown their children for not being Christian. But if you are under the age of 18, and for women in my state it's 17, because you can be kicked out at 17 in my state. If you're a younger child, say 15, 16, maybe 17 in your state, I would recommend, once again, do not tell them, because it'll make all holidays based on Christianity, and I'm using that term lightly because Christmas is not based on Christianity, it's based on paganism. But Christian holidays, I should say, it'll make them really awkward. for your family members and for you. So I would recommend you not doing it. But if you must tell your relatives, there's a few things you should keep in mind when you're doing it. One, try not to be offensive. Like, don't be like, well, Christianity's stupid, so I don't believe in it. Don't say something like that, because what you understand is your parents have been believing that since they were younger than you, most likely. They've probably been Christian for all of their lives, been raised that way from their grandparents and their grandparents' grandparents, and then blah, blah, blah. So they're probably not going to take it very well. So you need to be respectful of their beliefs because they are your parents, and I believe you should have some respect where it's gained. Of course, I don't really respect my parents very much because of how I was treated as a child. I think it was very wrong for what they've done. But you may have some kind of respect. Your parents may have earned some respect from you. And although I do love my parents, I just do not respect them in that way. I do respect their beliefs, though, because I am financially dependent on my mother. Not so much my mother anymore, but she does give me like $200 a month to help pay for food. I live with my grandmother, so because I moved out of my mother's house because she was just a bitch. But, you know, that's personal. So just be respectful of their beliefs. Don't try to engage in a debate unless they start one with you. However, if they do begin to question your ideologies, you should remain firm. You should not look at the ground. You shouldn't try to avoid discussing their, what their concerns are. You should be well prepared to answer any questions whatsoever. Like my dad asked me, why did you become atheist? I said, well, it was a gradual process because I've been studying every religion since I was 12, and I slowly began to study more and more deeply, and I began to study Hinduism, Buddhism, and then I finally got to where the only religion I hadn't really studied was my very own religion. And when I began to study it more closely, I discovered I didn't really believe it. I discovered there were 474 contradictions, which you can see on Skeptic's Annotated Bible. I'll probably post a link to that in the side. But other than that, and then he asked me, well, why... it's all up to interpretations, and why didn't you just... it's metaphors. And I'm like, well, the thing is, if you take it like that, the way I'm perceiving, like the Garden of Eden, is that the snake was not actually Satan, because it never says he was Satan. The snake was actually a personification of pagan gods that they wanted to demonize and make the bad guy in the creation story to, I guess, kind of convert pagans to Judaism. And that's probably when the conversation ended. So this is just a little public service announcement to YouTubers who would possibly think about telling their parents they're atheist. Don't do it. This is the only advice I'm really strong about giving you. Other than that, if you do have to tell them, or they ask, I wouldn't recommend lying. Like, do what I did. If they ask, by all means, tell them. But don't come out and tell them about it. It's better for them to ask you, because that means they're probably already knowing. If they're asking, they probably already know that you aren't Christian. So, just wait for them to ask, or if they start, if you just really want to tell them and just like kind of kill every holiday you have with your parents, go right ahead. But I wouldn't recommend it. So, this is my little public service announcement. This is the Atheist Advocate. Bye.